Hey everyone, today we're going to do Pascal's triangle. It's a very common math problem, and let's look at the example. Given a non-negative integer num rows, generate the first num rows of Pascal's triangle. So basically, if we're given 2, we want to generate this 1, 1, 1. If we're given 3, we want to generate this triangle. If we're given 4, we want to generate this triangle. So how does this triangle become? All right, so you start off with this first row, which is just a 1, and then every cell beneath it is, so when you get to the next row, you see here like a cell is the sum of the cell above it and to the left with the cell above it to the right. And so on the second row, the cell above it to the left is empty, and so it's 0. And cell above it to the right is 1, so we get 1 again. Same for this one. Cell above it to the left is 1, but cell above it to the right is not a cell, and so it results to 0. So here, when we actually have two cells that are present, we can say, okay, the left one is 1, the right one is 1, so you sum them and you get 2. Okay, so we have to do that in code, and let's get cracking. So the first thing I see here is if num rows is less than 1, right, then we want to just return the empty array. Otherwise, we initialize our output array with just this first row that we know starts with a 1, right? Then we say, okay, now we want to start I equals 1 because we've already filled the first row. Say for I in range num rows plus 1, since we want to create num rows we have to do this thing. So make our current row ends up being an empty array, and we'll say for j in range I plus 1, basically if our I is equal to 1, our index of our row is 1, we actually want 2 elements in it. So we want j to go through 0, the 0th index of that row, and the first index of that row. Now, for each index of that row, we want to say, okay, add the the one above it, and to the left, and add the one above it and to the right. So we can say our value, let's say, is equal to self.getItem of the row above it, which is output of I minus 1. That's the row above it. And in this case, we want the cell to the left, right? And so we'll say j minus 1, right? And then we'll add that value to the value on the right, which is output of I minus 1, and then just j, right? And then we will add that value to our current row. So current row dot append value. At the end of this loop, we'll have our whole row. So we want to append that row to our output. So output dot append current row. And we want to return our output. Okay. So now the only thing we don't have is this get item helper. So let's work on that. So here we got define get item takes self, takes a row, and it takes an index, right? So here we have to check, okay, in this case, the index we're giving, j is 1, our row is 0, our row is 1, and our j is 0, right? And we want the value to the left of it. So our j in this case is -1. And so we need to have a check here that says if index is less than 0, or our index is greater than or equal to the length of the row, meaning it's on the left or the right side of the length of this previous row, we want it to return 0, right? We don't want it to return an error. Otherwise, we want to return the value at that row index. So otherwise, return row index. Okay, so I think that should work. Let's run it. Sweet, for 0 it works. What about for 4? No. Okay, I see what I'm doing wrong. I'm doing a for loop, but I want to skip this first index. So let's skip that, and we'll start the range at 1, and we'll end it at number of rows plus 1 because we want to include number of rows in our range. Let's run that. Okay, so let's actually remove this. We have one too many outputs. Okay, perfect. Okay. So I think this works. Let's submit it and see what happens. Sweet. Okay, that is Pascal's triangle. Basically, the tricky part is just this part, getting the item and checking the bounds, making sure if it's out of the bounds, return 0, otherwise just add the 2 items to the top. Add 2 items above it, to the left and to the right, and get our value. If you liked, you know what to do. Please like, comment, subscribe. Otherwise, don't